The girl on the steps. The world outside Raphael de Leon's mansion was still asleep. Thick fog rolled slowly through the trees that surrounded his estate, wrapping the iron gates in silence. Inside, every clock tick echoed through the marble halls. A warm cup of black coffee sat untouched on the edge of Raphael's glossy kitchen counter. He stood quietly, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling window, his sharp suit already perfect, his tie unwrinkled, his face unreadable. It was just another day. Another quiet, perfectly calculated, emotionless day. Raphael preferred it that way. He had trained his life to be silent. Clean, sharp edges, business meetings, scheduled calls, portfolio reviews, and charity events he never stayed long for. His days were planned down to the minute, not because he was busy, but because he needed it. He needed the structure to keep the memories away. But this morning would break every rule he had built for himself. As he crossed the hallway toward the front door, briefcase in hand, his security guard's voice called from behind. "Mr. de Leon, car's ready." Raphael gave a tight nod. "Thank you." He reached for the heavy mahogany door and pulled it open. But what he saw made him freeze. There, curled tightly on the cold marble steps, was a little girl, no more than 8, maybe 9. Her hair was tangled, her face smudged with dirt, and her thin arms were wrapped around a worn-out teddy bear. Her knees were pulled up under a jacket far too small for her frame, faded pink with embroidered butterflies along the hem. And in that instant, Raphael dropped his briefcase. Because he had seen that jacket before. Years ago, in a store window, for a little girl with bouncing curls and a giggle that lit up his mansion like the sun. His daughter, Emma. The jacket had been hers. "Sir," the security guard stepped beside him, eyes narrowing. "Should I call the police?" Raphael didn't answer. His world had gone still. His eyes locked on the teddy bear. The same bear that had once sat on Emma's pillow. The same bear they had buried with her 5 years ago, after the accident that stole her life and shattered his soul. The little girl looked up, eyes wide with fear, but she didn't move. She just held that bear tighter. Raphael stepped forward slowly, his hands shaking. Where did you get that?" he asked, voice low and breaking. The girl didn't speak. Her lips were turning blue from the cold. "Mrs. Alvarez," Raphael shouted suddenly, louder than he meant to. His housekeeper rushed to the door, stopping in shock. "Oh, Dios mío," she whispered, rushing down the steps and wrapping her coat around the child. "She's freezing, Mr. de Leon. We need to get her inside." Raphael stood frozen. All the air had left his lungs. The teddy bear. The jacket. This couldn't be real. It couldn't. Mrs. Alvarez gently lifted the girl to her feet. The child swayed from weakness, but didn't resist. "I'll call a doctor," she said quickly, leading the child inside. Raphael followed slowly, his heart pounding louder than it had in years. He watched as Mrs. Alvarez guided the girl into the guest room and wrapped her in blankets. The girl sat silently, still clutching the bear. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stared at the fireplace like it wasn't real. Later that day, Raphael sat in his office at De Leon Technologies. Charts glowed on the screen. Executives took numbers, deadlines, forecasts, acquisitions. But Raphael heard none of it. In his briefcase, hidden beneath folders, was the teddy bear. The one from Emma's grave. He had brought it with him, not because it made sense, but because he couldn't let it go. "Mr. de Leon," one executive said, confused. "Your decision on the merger." Raphael blinked. "I need more time." Everyone in the room exchanged surprised glances. Raphael de Leon never postponed, never hesitated. But today, nothing made sense. By the time he arrived back home, the sky had turned gray. Mrs. Alvarez met him at the door. "She's still sleeping," she whispered. "Clara brought her some soup, but she hasn't eaten, hasn't spoken a word." Raphael walked to the doorway of the guest room. Inside, the girl lay beneath warm blankets, the teddy bear tucked under her chin. He watched her for a long moment. The way her hair fell, the shape of her eyebrows, the stillness, and then something broke inside him. That night, he poured himself a glass of scotch and stood alone at the top of the stairs. From there, he could see the living room couch where the girl now lay, moved by Clara so she'd feel less alone. Emma used to slide down that railing. He whispered to himself, "Yell, I'm flying, Daddy." He drank the scotch in one gulp, but it didn't burn. Nothing burned anymore. Until now. Downstairs, the girl stirred. Her lips moved in sleep. "Mommy, Isabel." Raphael's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. That name, Isabel, it stabbed through his mind like lightning. He hadn't heard it in years. He turned quickly and left the stairs behind. In the quiet of his study, he sat with his head in his hands. Who was this girl? Why did she wear Emma's jacket? Why did she say the name Isabel? And how? How was she holding the bear that had been buried with his child? The name scribbled in the corner. Raphael Delion wasn't a man who cried. Not at funerals. Not after Emma's casket was lowered into the ground. Not even when he locked her room and never opened it again. But now, at nearly midnight, he sat in the hallway outside the guest room, tears silently rolling down his cheeks. Through the crack in the door, he could see the little girl, this strange, fragile child curled into a tight ball beneath the soft blankets. Her hands clutched the same teddy bear that had once belonged to his daughter, and she had said a name in her sleep, Isabel. It had knocked the breath from his lungs. Isabel Winters, a name he had buried deep in the back of his mind, a name he hadn't said aloud in nearly a decade. Once in college, she had been everything. Wild, brilliant, a free spirit who painted stars on her bedroom ceiling and quoted poetry like it was air. She had pulled him out of his head, out of his numbers and equations and code. For 3 months, she was the chaos to his order, the color to his grayscale world. Then she vanished. No note, no goodbye, nothing. He never found out why. But now this girl, this tiny, trembling child, had spoken Isabel's name like it meant comfort, like it meant home. The next morning, Raphael sat at the breakfast table, stiff as a statue. Clara placed a hot mug of coffee in front of him. "She's awake," she said softly. "Still hasn't said much, but—" She held up a small notepad filled with pencil drawings. Raphael blinked. "She drew these." Clara nodded. "All morning. It's how she communicates." Raphael took the pad carefully. The first page showed the mansion's front steps. The angle was from the ground, like someone lying there looking up. A tall wooden door loomed above. The second sketch was of a woman, long curly hair, a smile, holding a child's hand. At the bottom of the page, in faint letters, was a single name written in a child's scrawl. Isabel. Raphael's hand trembled as he traced the name. "She's not just a homeless child," Clara said quietly. She knew Isabel. Raphael looked at the girl sitting quietly in the living room, coloring in silence. Or was it more than that? He stood suddenly. "I want to see the storage room," he said. The door hadn't been opened in 5 years. Dust coated the boxes, each one labeled carefully in Clara's handwriting. Emma's winter clothes, Emma's school projects, Emma's keepsakes. Raphael's fingers hovered over a box marked E17. Winter jacket, pink, butterfly hem. He opened the lid. Empty. He checked the next box, then another. The jacket was gone. His heart thudded in his chest. He turned to Clara. "No one's touched these." "Not since you sealed the room," she confirmed, pale. "Then how is she wearing Emma's jacket?" he whispered. They stood in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down like a storm cloud. "She said Mommy Isabel in her sleep," Clara whispered. "What if—" "No," Raphael interrupted too quickly. "It's impossible." But the word impossible suddenly didn't feel so solid. Later that afternoon, Clara sat in her car outside a discreet building on the east side of Manhattan. She clutched a tissue wrapped with a few strands of hair. Elise's hair. "I'd like to arrange a private paternity test," she said quietly into her phone. The technician didn't ask questions. Clara had always planned for every scenario. She never imagined needing this one. Back at the mansion, Raphael tried to focus on his laptop, but his eyes kept drifting to the drawing still on his desk, the one with Isabel's name written at the bottom. She had never told him she was pregnant. But Elise looked about. What? 9. Isabel vanished nearly 10 years ago. His hand tightened around the pencil as he scribbled numbers in the margins of a notepad. Everything aligned. Every date. Every possibility. And that name, Isabel, hadn't been spoken in this house or his life for years. That night, the child drew again. A series of stick figures. One small child. One woman with long hair. One man. At the bottom, she wrote 2 words. Monty Isabel. Raphael sat across from her in silence. His throat felt dry. His voice caught. "Elise," he said gently, testing the name Clara had coaxed from the girl earlier. "Who is this?" He pointed to the woman in the drawing. The girl hugged the paper to her chest and whispered the word again, slightly louder. "Mommy." His chest tightened. "Your mommy gave you Emma's jacket?" he asked, voice shaking. She nodded. "Do you remember your mommy's full name?" She hesitated, then pointed again to the drawing. "Isabel." The following morning, Clara returned from her errand with pale cheeks and tired eyes. "I sent the samples," she told Raphael. "The results should be ready in a few days." Raphael didn't respond. He stood at the window, staring at Elise in the garden. She was drawing again. "Look at her," Clara said softly. "You see it now, don't you?" He nodded. "She's mine." But just as Raphael was beginning to feel hope for the first time in years, the doorbell rang. A woman stood at the doorstep. Expensive coat, tight smile. Legal papers in hand. "I'm Lorraine Grant," she said. "Isabel's sister. Elise's aunt." The color drained from Raphael's face. The fight for Elise. The room fell silent after she said it. "I'm Lorraine Grant. Isabel's sister. Elise's aunt." Raphael's world tilted again. He stared at the woman standing in his doorway. She looked nothing like Isabel. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. Her smile was too practiced. Her heels didn't belong on his marble steps, and neither did the stack of papers in her hand. She didn't come for Elise. She came with a plan. "May I come in?" she asked sweetly. Raphael hesitated, then stepped aside. Clara stood nearby, her eyes narrowing as she studied Lorraine. "I've been searching for Elise since Isabel died," Lorraine said, settling herself on the living room couch like it belonged to her. "You can imagine my shock when I discovered she was living with you." Raphael's jaw tightened. "She appeared on my doorstep. She was sick. Alone. And I'm grateful you didn't leave her outside," Lorraine said quickly. "But I'm her family. Her blood. Surely you understand." "I'm her father," Raphael said sharply. "Unproven." "Until recently," Lorraine said, pulling a folded document from her bag. "I filed a petition for temporary custody. You'll receive the official notice by morning." Clara's face went pale. "You're taking her away?" Raphael asked in disbelief. "I'm giving her stability. A real home. With me." Her voice was calm, but her eyes flicked to the luxury decor around her. "Unless, of course, we could come to some kind of arrangement." Raphael's eyes narrowed. "What kind of arrangement?" Lorraine leaned forward. "You have wealth. I have legal rights. Maybe there's a donation you could make to support Elise's care. In exchange, I reconsider the custody claim." Now it was clear. She wasn't here for Elise. She was here for money. Clara stood up. "You need to leave. Now." Lorraine smirked, collected her bag, and walked to the door. "This isn't over," she said softly to Raphael. You may be her biological father, but I'm the one the court will trust. She left, slamming the door behind her. That night, Raphael sat alone in his study. His hands shook with rage, but not just at Lorraine. At himself. For missing 9 years. For letting Clara make decisions for him. For burying the part of himself that could have been a father, so deep it nearly disappeared. Across from him, Clara entered slowly. She's bluffing, Raphael muttered. Right. Clara looked down, then opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of envelopes. What are those? He asked. They're from Isabel. Raphael's breath caught. Clara placed them on the desk. She tried to reach you. Years ago. She wrote, she emailed. I deleted them. Why? Raphael asked, his voice raw. Because you were broken. Emma's death nearly destroyed you. I didn't think you could handle more pain. Raphael stood abruptly. That wasn't your choice to make. I know, Clara whispered, and I regret it every day. He turned away, gripping the edge of the desk. After a long silence, he said, You're fired. Clara nodded, tears in her eyes. I deserve that. The next morning, a white envelope arrived at Raphael's door. Temporary custody petition. Emergency review hearing. 48 hours. He had 2 days to prove he deserved to keep his daughter. In the hours that followed, Raphael became a man on a mission. He called the best family lawyer in New York. He had Isabel's letters scanned and submitted. He filed DNA results, Elise's drawings, and teacher recommendations. And then he made one more call. Ms. Patel, this is Raphael Delian. I'm ready to launch the foundation. Now, 2 days later, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. The media had already caught wind of the case. Tech billionaire fights for daughter he never knew. In the front row, Elise sat beside a court guardian, her feet barely touching the floor. Raphael sat at the defense table, his hands clasped, his back straight. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. But he was ready. Lorraine sat across the aisle, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She wore a navy blue suit and a thin smile. The judge entered. The room rose. This court will now hear the case of Elise Chambers, the clerk announced. Lorraine's lawyer went first. He painted Raphael as a recluse, cold, distant, emotionally unstable since his daughter's death. He claimed Lorraine had a more consistent relationship with Elise, that she had tried to find her niece after Isabel's death. He even hinted that Raphael was using the child for sympathy in headlines. Raphael didn't flinch. Then his lawyer stood. She held up the DNA test, the letters, the timeline. But it was Elise's drawing, her sketch of the mansion steps, where 2 stick figures sat side by side, that made the room quiet. This is where she found home, the lawyer said. Not in a bloodline, not in a courtroom, but on those steps, with the father who never even knew she existed. The judge leaned forward. I'd like to speak with Elise alone. 20 minutes later, Elise returned, holding something in her hand. It was another drawing. This time, it showed 3 people. A small girl, a man in a suit, and a woman with long hair floating above them in the sky. The judge asked gently, Elise, who are these people? The little girl looked up. That's me. That's my daddy. And that's Mommy, watching us. Tears welled in Raphael's eyes. The judge smiled softly. Thank you, sweetheart. Later that afternoon, the courtroom reconvened. The judge's voice was steady. This court finds that Raphael Delian is not only the biological father of Elise Chambers, but the appropriate guardian, morally, emotionally, and legally. Raphael froze. Full custody is granted. Effective immediately. Lorraine gasped. But Your Honor. The judge raised a hand. And Miss Grant, future custody petitions are hereby barred due to evidence of financial coercion and pattern behavior. Court is adjourned. The gavel slammed down. Raphael didn't move. Not until Elise ran into his arms. She hugged him tightly, burying her face in his neck. "Daddy," she whispered. For the first time, she said it without fear. And for the first time, he felt worthy of hearing it. Months passed. The mansion changed. The curtains stayed open. The halls echoed with footsteps again. Emma's room was transformed into a creative studio, half hers, half Elise's. Drawings filled the walls. Laughter filled the air. One afternoon, Raphael stood at a podium beneath a banner that read, "Emma's Steps Foundation." Behind him, Elise sat in the front row, holding a sketchbook in her lap. Raphael took a deep breath. 313 days ago, he began, "I found a little girl asleep on the steps of my house. I thought I was giving her a home. But really, she gave me one." Cameras clicked. She reminded me how to love, how to hope, and how to begin again. He gestured to the giant image behind him, Elise's original sketch of the marble steps. "This," he said, voice full of emotion, "is where she found me. And it's where our future began."